everybody. So today we are going to be talking about the United States Uranus Return. This has been on my mind for a very long time. The first time I ever did a video on this subject or mentioned it in a video, it's been mentioned other times since then, but the first time was in the fall of 2021. As I'm filming this, it is July 20th of 2024. So almost 3 years ago is when I mentioned this for the first time in a video, brought it up. So it has been on my mind for a long time because as big of a deal as Pluto's return for the US was and is, because it's still kind of going on right now, Uranus's return, in my opinion, has always been a much bigger deal, has always been the bigger problem. This is from a historical lens, things that have happened in the past within the US's history when we've gone through a Uranus return. Now, when I say, look, I also want to throw this out there. I am not trying to be fear-mongery. I am not trying to be scary. I want to throw that out there immediately. That is not my goal here. I don't think that worrying about the future does much. What the fuck does that do? It doesn't do anything. However, I do think being prepared for what could be coming around the corner is a good thing. I think that's a very good thing. And those are different things. To me, being prepared or preparing is a useful way to spend your energy, and worrying is a useless way to spend your energy. One is productive, one is not. So think of this as knowledge is power. And, don't think of it as a scary thing, just knowledge is power kind of thing. Okay. So in saying that, I'm going to throw some dates out. Oh, actually, before I do that, first I want to mention, I've been writing like crazy on my blog, on Astrological Ramblings on my website. I did a blog post about this subject, about the US's Uranus return. I will link it in the description box. I've also done a video on Uranus in Gemini. I'll also link that to the description box. I felt very very righty, like I really wanted to write recently. So I've been doing that. Also, if you are interested in having me read for you, I've had a lot of people leave comments asking me where they can find me. If you want to find me for a reading, I will put that link in the description box below as well. It's my website, saturnseason.com, under the menu of services tab. But I will put the link in the description box where you can find me directly for that. I'm wondering, I have my website in the homepage for this YouTube channel, but I'm wondering if maybe it's not as visible as I'm thinking that it is. I might need to look into that, but I wanted to get that out of the way just real quick. Those things out of the way, those quick things. Now we can talk about the United States Uranus return. Now, okay. So I have here, I'm going to be looking at my dates and stuff on the blog post so I don't say anything incorrectly. Okay, so just to start this off, the last 4 times that Uranus has been in Gemini, the United States has gone through some stuff, right? 2 of them were during Uranian returns. One of them was when this country was being created, and then one of them was in the 1690s. So, and transit Uranus it'll move into a sign, it'll retrograde back, move into a sign, stay there. And then, so there's some bouncing around that it'll do, but it tends to be in a sign, squarely in a sign, firmly in a sign for about 6 years and some change. So the last times that transit Uranus was in Gemini, where it didn't retrograde back or move forward, April 28th of 1691 through July 30th of 1697, though it did actually start in 1690. Then it moved back and moved forward again. The next one was April 8th of 1775 through July 12th of 1781. The next one was March 14th of 1859 through June 27th of 1865. And then the most recent one was from May 15th of 1942 through August 30th of 1948. Now, these dates correlate with, for the United States, they correlate with World War II. They correlate with the American Civil War. They correlate with the American Revolution. They also correlate the one in the 1690s. That one correlates with the Salem witch trials, which is kind of interesting. So even though the US was not a country at that time, right? It wasn't a country then, but there was some shit going on here. Even so, it's interesting. I just thought that was interesting. Okay, so also throwing out there the dates for, and this will all be timestamped, the dates for transit Uranus in Gemini. Transit Uranus will move into Gemini this time in the 2020s. It'll move into Gemini on July 7th of 2025 for the first time. It will slip back into Taurus on November 8th of 2025. And it'll be there until April 26th of 2026. It will move into Gemini on April 26th of 2026, where it will stay until August 3rd of 2032. It'll enter Cancer for the first time on August 3rd of 2032. Then transit Uranus will move back into Gemini from December 12th of 2032 through May 22nd of 2033. And by that point, that's when it'll move into Cancer, and it'll stay there, and it'll be there, you know, for 6 years or whatever. Now, the United States Uranus Return will be going on from July 5th of 2026 through May 28th of 2029. And when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at a 5-degree orb applying and separating between transit Uranus and natal Uranus. So the US is, let me see, I'm going to share the screen because I have a picture of the chart. So essentially what I'm looking at, the transits on this chart here are set for July 26th of 2027, which is the first time transit Uranus is conjunct natal Uranus. The US is natal Uranus. But it'll be within 5 degrees for the first time, July 5th of 2026. And then it'll be within that 5-degree orb applying and separating through May 28th of 2029. So almost 3 years. Almost 3 years. Now, the 3 times that transit Uranus will be exactly conjunct the US's natal Uranus are on July 26th of 2027, November 5th of 2027. This will be from retrograde motion, and May 11th of 2028. So 3 passes, 3 exact passes. Now, what is a Uranus return anyway? I'm going to stop sharing this for right now. What is oh man, it's going to freeze me. Yep, I think it froze me anyway. What is a Uranus return anyway? Essentially what it is when transit Uranus comes home to the same, degree, minutes, and seconds of Uranus in a natal chart. That's essentially what return charts are. I'm sure you all have heard of solar return charts. They happen every year when the sun in the sky comes back to the same degree, minute, and seconds as your natal sun. So yeah, essentially that's what a return chart is, when the planet comes home, as it is in the natal chart. Now, Uranus returns happen roughly every 84 years. So not everybody will have a Uranus return. Not every person will have a Uranus return. Not every country will have a Uranus return. If they're not around for 84 years, they're not going to have one. If a person doesn't live for 84 years, they're not going to have a Uranus return, so. But essentially what happens during a Uranus return is Uranian themes are going to come to the forefront. They are going to need to be dealt with. Like if there are things that need to be dealt with in terms of Uranus in a chart, things that need to be liberated, say, because Uranus is the great liberator, things that need to be just dealt with, Uranian things that need to be dealt with. Those things come to a forefront, usually come to a head. Yeah. So that's essentially what a Uranus return is. Uranian themes are highlighted, are at the forefront. Okay. So anytime the US has had a Uranus return, the US has been at war. Now, in the original video that I did about this in 2021, it still makes me laugh. Somebody was like, when has the US not been at war? I can't argue with you there. A bug. Go away. It's a mosquito. They keep biting me. Anyway, go. Okay. Okay. I can't argue with them. Like the we have always been we are always at war. We always seem to be at war. We always seem to be involved in some kind of war, whether that's a war that we're helping, you know, our allies with, helping them in some way, or it's a war that we're fighting in some sort of by proxy way, or whatever it is. We always seem to be involved with something. But the kind of wars that I'm talking about here, the American Civil War, specifically in the 1860s, and World War II, were very, very direct conflicts. Like, we weren't fighting somebody when we really wanted to be fighting somebody else. We know that there are wars that we that we are involved in that are very much that way. Those proxy wars. This wasn't these aren't proxy wars. Or just, you know, these weren't wars that we were just, you know, helping our allies, you know, like in the case of, you know, I mean, obviously we didn't get involved in World War II until Pearl Harbor, when we were, you know, attacked. Direct hit, right? The American Civil War, direct hit on this country. So, you know, by our fellow countrymen. So these wars are much more direct. So when I think about Uranus returns, or the Uranus return in the US, my mind does go to the idea of war, because this is what has happened all of these times. Now, what's also interesting about this is before each of these wars, there was also some transit Pluto fuckery to the US's natal Pluto. Before Uranus's return in the 1860s, during the Civil War, transit Uranus was in Aries, or sorry, not transit Uranus, transit Pluto was in Aries, squaring the US's natal Pluto. During World War II, well, actually not during World War II, it was before, a little bit before. Transit Pluto was in Cancer, opposing the US's natal Pluto. So in both of these instances where we were at war during a Uranus return, there was also some transit Pluto fuckery that occurred before that, in a challenging way, right? Oppositions are challenging. Opposition aspects are challenging. Square aspects are challenging. Now, in the 1980s, early 1980s, 82, 83, 84, even once transit Pluto moved into Scorpio. So I'd say like 1980 to 85, I think is what I have. From 1980 to 1985, transit Pluto in Libra and into Scorpio was squaring the US's natal Pluto. Now, why did that not cause a war? Because, you know, in the 80s, the US, the Cold War between the US and the USSR got hot. It became hot. It became hotter. We'll say that. It became hotter during that period of time. So why didn't we actually end up going to war? I think a big reason why we didn't go to war was because we weren't about to have a Uranus return. I really do. I think that if things were different and Uranus was about to move into Gemini, I think the 1980s could have looked very different, especially the end. I think really it could have looked very different. But Uranus was moving into Sagittarius, far away from Gemini, on the opposite end of things. But I do think that could have gone very differently, because that Pluto, the difficult Pluto aspect, transit Pluto aspect to the US's natal Pluto was there. That was in play. But we were lacking, you know, Uranus about to move into Gemini. So there's that, which is really probably a good thing, because I think that probably would have gotten very hot had it been different. Yeah. Now the other thing, another a major war that perhaps doesn't follow suit with the Uranus return is World War One. World War One, there wasn't a Uranus return happening. There wasn't transit Pluto fuckery in a challenging way, right before it to the US's natal Pluto. And I think that, unlike World War II, where there was a direct hit on the US, World War I didn't really have that happen. We also weren't in World War I that long. We were only in World War I from I think April of 1917 through November 11th of 1918. So we weren't in it that long either. So, but I do think that the lack of a direct hit on the US plays into that as well. And the reason for that may have been because of there not being, Uranus entering Gemini or, some kind of transit Pluto fuckery before then. I'll stop with I could go off on, I'll stop. I'll stop. I do really love history. I really am a history slut. Okay. So, okay. I'm going to pull the chart again, the US's natal chart again, show it again. Hopefully I don't freeze again. Okay. So why does this tend to signal war? Why might this signal war for the US? Why might this signal, or maybe I shouldn't even put it out there, the war thing. Maybe I should just say, why does this signal? Jesus Christ, that's fucking loud. Can you hear that? Bye. Okay. Sorry. It's a lot of noise. Okay. So why might this signal, I keep getting bit by mosquitoes too. Oh my God, it's so annoying. Okay. Why might this signal war? Or why might this signal chaos? Or why might this signal trauma? Right? These are all, war isn't so much a Uranian thing, but chaos, trauma, those are definitely Uranian notions, among other things like liberation and freedom and detachment and fragmentation and weirdness, differences, quirkiness, all of these kinds of things are also Uranian as well. So why might this signal that? I have here in the notes of the blog post. Okay. I won't read from it actually. Okay, so Uranus in the US's chart is conjunct the descendant. Now, the descendant is a few things. It could be what we attract into our lives, whether we like it or not, whether we're trying to or not. Not Uranus. The descendant can also be, it's like the shadow, right? It's like I know I've talked about this before. It's like the shadow. It's stuff that we might not always want to acknowledge or fuck with or pay attention to, like a shadow on the ground, like a literal shadow on the ground. We know it's there. We don't really care that it's there. Most people don't. You might be somebody who does, but most people aren't going to care that their shadow's on, most people aren't going to care. Their shadow's not going to scare them. They know it's there when the sun is setting, but they don't, whatever. It's kind of like whatever. That's kind of what the descendant is. So that could cause, in saying that, things conjunct the descendant, like Uranus, that planetary energy could get ignored, dismissed, forgotten, not paid attention to, whatever the case might be. Not even, and it could also be that Uranus, because it's conjunct the descendant, because it's something we don't really care about as a country. I mean, it tends to, it's more of a it just seems like something that we don't really care about that much, or we just kind of ignore or dismiss. It could also be that when we embrace Uranus's energy, when we embrace Uranian energy, we don't really care that we're doing it. We don't really care. um so I do think that because of that, we might, during Uranus returns, and because when Uranus comes home, we kind of have to face Uranian things. I think the US, we tend to ignore, dismiss, and or forget our own perception of chaos and how chaotic we are as a country. We do. We don't, we are. We are chaotic. We are chaotic. We don't seem to really pay attention to that, but we are chaotic. We are very chaotic. I live here. I think we're very chaotic. I have clients from all over the world. They think we're chaotic. And I don't blame them. I think that, I think that we don't always perceive ourselves as chaotic, right? Perception, perceiving, being a Gemini thing. And then the chaos being a Uranian thing. I don't think that we always perceive our chaos for what it actually is. And I think Uranus returns force us to do that in a way. I think it's possible that they do force us to do that, either by us kind of seeing our own chaos for itself within this country, or coming head to head or face to face with other countries who might be just as chaotic, if not more so, than we are. The attraction part of the descendant, what we attract kind of thing. I think that could be a thing here too. I do. I think that I think that could be some of it. I have here in my post, well, I think the average person does see this. I think the average person does see this chaos. But I also think we in this country are used to this chaos. So we don't like, it's chaotic, but it's like our chaos and it's become normal to us. And so we might not always think of it as chaos, but it is. I also, I have here, we are so used to the chaos that we might even see such as normal, or it might be tempting to do that. Nothing about this shit is normal, has ever been normal, or will ever be normal. Because I mean, yeah. I also think Uranus returns can force us to see chaos that we cause in other parts of the world. Not so much or ways that we have played into chaos across the world. I do think that is a thing here as well. Definitely, the whole thing about, maybe not so much in the American Civil War, because we were such a new country, though I think it probably did play in a little bit. And again, I want to spare you all too much more history, but definitely in World War II and like what led up to World War II happening. And not that we were like the sole reason. I'm not trying to say we were the sole reason for it. There were a whole bunch of reasons, but there was a lot of chaos in Europe and in other parts of in other countries. Germany was, after World War I was completely fucked, essentially, which led to the, whatever. I'll spare you on that. I do think that we during Uranus's return kind of do, in a sense, need to face the chaos that maybe we have caused, either on purpose or not on purpose. I'm not saying that we necessarily always run around causing chaos on purpose, but I do think that under this Uranus return, that'll start in 2026, I do think there could be some of that comes up. Like, we're going to have to see perhaps chaos that we've caused in the world. And it may have, because I think that I have here in blog post, the US tends to cause a bunch of chaos other places under the guise of freedom, humanitarianism, and liberation. And I put those in quotes because while I do think that I think the US has done a lot of good, but I also think there are things that we've done that aren't so great. Not everything is black and white, right? And I think that's probably the case for a lot of countries, for most countries. You know, there's been some good done, some not so good done. It just is what it is. I wish we could all do good all the time, you know? So I put those words in quotes in the blog post because sometimes it might be for the higher good, sometimes it might not be. But when we, you know, I do think that we will have to kind of deal with ways that we have caused chaos in the world, even if it was under real liberation or real humanitarianism or real freedom for another country, right? Or people in another country, trying to really help them with good intentions. But there was still this chaos element, you know, and the US has a tendency to do this sort of thing where, you know, we go into a country, the follow through. It's like we go in to liberate, right? I put it in quotes or not because, you know, who knows? But we go in to do this, and then it's like we don't stick the landing. The follow through isn't always there. And, you know, that kind of makes sense here with Uranus in Gemini in this chart. You know, neither one of these, Uranus is too fast. It's shocking change. It's lightning quick. Gemini is usually too scattered or too all over the place to have a lot of follow through. So this kind of does make sense that we might not realize that even when we try to do things like liberation or freedom or what have you for other places, we might end up causing more chaos in the long run or more chaos at the time than we mean to. Sometimes we might mean to. I don't know. It's probably a whole other discussion for another time. But, you know, I do think that plays in. And there could be some of this that comes up during, there could be, I could see that coming into play in some way during Uranus's return in 2026. And another thing, you know, that we might not see here, right? Because it's conjunct the descendant. Is this, okay, so we, you know, humanitarianism is a Uranian notion. And Gemini energy is much more at the local level, regional level. I do think that sometimes we don't realize as a country how much humanitarianism is actually needed at the local level. And by that, I mean within this country. How much liberation is needed within this country. and it is. It absolutely is. Now, that is not to say that we can't help other places. I think a lot of times people would like to make it seem like you can only do one or the other. We can only help other countries or we can help people here. And I don't think it works like that. I think that we can do both. I do think that we need to make sure that that particular part doesn't get lost or left out, the humanitarianism on a local level, because there are a lot of people here, just like there are a lot of people in other places in the world that need help, need humanitarianism, need liberation, need freedom. There are also a lot of people that need that here. And I think that under this particular Uranus return, there might be something about that comes up. You know, we might be faced with something along these lines. You know, how can we do this better? How can we not ignore it? And I can think of a million ways that could go. I'll spare you on that, but I do, you know, I mean, there are just so many, I mean, there are so many ways that people aren't as liberated as they once were. And I think these things might come back around, might come knocking during Uranus's return this time. And really, I do feel like this time, because Pluto, we just have Pluto's return, right? I feel like we're going to see echoes and transits, right? There are also transits that we'll look at in another video from other eras. But I feel like this particular Uranus return is going to have flavors of both the American Civil War and World War II. Now, I don't say that to be scary. And I also don't think it's going to look like what people might think it's going to look like right now. Like, it's not going to look like how we think it is. I don't really know how the hell it's going to look, but I don't think it's not going to look like how we think it will, but I could easily see it playing out where there is some kind of something or another going on US soil along with elsewhere. And when I say something going on US soil, I don't necessarily mean like to the same degree that the Civil War was going on. I don't necessarily mean it like that, because I don't really think, I think, honestly, I think we're probably too complacent to really, to do anything, which is probably a good thing. But I think I'm not sure. My point, I won't go into all that. I could see there being themes of both. Like, there's going to be shit going on here in the US, and there's going to be shit going on outside of the US. And I think we're going to be involved in both. I just don't think it's going to look exactly like how we might think that it's going to look when we think about like how it might look. Let me see. What else do I want to talk about in this one? Because I did want to save something for another one. Also, the sun is about to go down and the shadows are getting kind of weird. I think I'll stop this one here. No, I'll mention one more thing that I think could come up under this Uranus return. I don't think that we see as a country how much chaos, trauma, fragmentation, our own media and communications causes this country. Now, I say it like that because chaos, trauma, fragmentation, those are all Uranian things. Media and communications would definitely be a Gemini thing. Gemini energy communicates. Media would fall under that. Media could also fall under Aquarius and Uranus too, in a more far out way, further out. But I'm talking about all forms of media. I'm talking about all forms of media that can be consumed. This could be mainstream news media. This could be the thumbs up. Hey, this could be mainstream news media. This could be social media, any kind of media you can think of. And I do think that anybody that's been paying attention can see that this stuff, all forms of media, have they have caused a lot of fragmentation, a lot of division, a lot of chaos, and a lot of trauma. Now, within this country. Now, really, this is probably all over the world to a large extent. But since this is just about the US's Uranus return, that's why I'm, just mainly talking about that. But I definitely know it happens here in this country. This country is incredibly divided, incredibly polarized. It has been for a while. And I don't think that's getting better. I don't think that it's getting better. Not anytime soon. Not right now, anyway. And I don't think that we realize how much all forms of media play a part in this. Now, that's not to say that the individual person doesn't play a part in this either, but I do think that this stuff does play a part in us staying divided and staying fragmented off, which is a problem, especially with how polarized things are now in this country, how divided things are. Also, we communicate with, another thing about this country, I feel like we do communicate with each other rather chaotically. And I feel like this country does have a chaotic way of communicating. The people in this country, perhaps even this country with other countries, I feel like there is chaos involved with communication. We may not always see this. I feel like during Uranus's return, we will kind of be forced to see this in some way. I hope we do something good with it, but I do think that we will be forced to see this. We will come face to face with this. Now, I also want to make it clear that I'm not saying that people shouldn't watch the news or engage in social media or anything like that. I'm not at all saying that. I am not at all for censorship. I don't think that censorship is a good thing or banning things is a good thing. I don't think we should throw up walls at things we don't like. Because I think that when we start throwing up walls at things that we don't like, one day we're going to find that a wall is being thrown up around something that we like, right? That we as the individual likes. So I don't think throwing up censorship or walls is a good thing, or banning. I don't think any of that is good. So I'm certainly not saying for that to happen at all. But I think that we as a country need to be very aware of when certain forms of media, we just need to be aware about forms of media perhaps doing nothing but fragmenting off or being polarizing or dividing us. It doesn't mean you don't watch it. It doesn't mean you don't consume it, but just being aware that, okay, what I'm watching here is a polarizing thing. It is a chaotic thing. It is a fragmenting. It's a fragmenter. It's a divider. I think that is important to keep that in mind, to be aware of that. And I do think that sometimes we as a country might not do that. And it's probably to our benefit that we do realize this, acknowledge this. Of course, that, and I think the more people that do that, the better off we are, right? The more people that are aware of this being the case with forms of any kind of media, the better off we are. Yeah, I have here at the end of that part, it just seems important to be aware of different forms of media that might do nothing but cause trauma, chaos, and fragmentation. I do think that is very important. Okay, so this one got long. I do have more to say about this, which will probably be put out in a video that'll follow this one like the next day. But I'm going to go and stop sharing. The light is getting weird and it's really like getting in my eyes. You should not have done it this late. Tried to film that this late. Anyway. Okay. So leave your thoughts in the comments below if you want to about what you think about transit Uranus in Gemini with the US's Uranus return. I'd be very curious how you all feel about it, these sorts of things. Anyway, I'm going to head off, but I will see you all later.